I'll fix and start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares on the best part of my day.
The goods from the woods.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
Pat Riley. Mr. Goodnight, man of the hour, the tower of power, too sweet of a sour.
And as we mentioned at the end of last week's episode, this week, very, very special episode, episode number 95. This is a crossover with one of my favorite podcasts running right now. It's called What Did You Learn?
It's a fantastic podcast, and we're really happy to be, doing a crossover episode.
Yeah, I think you guys are really going to like this episode. We basically, What Did You Learn is a podcast hosted by two former guests of this podcast, Luke Jensen, Monika Scott, and each week they review a different documentary. And so I figured for a crossover episode, we should do something that's on brand for both of us. So we watched Beyond the Mat. From 1999,
which is part of the holy trinity of wrestling documentaries of the late 90s. So there's Beyond the Mat, Bret Hart Wrestling with Shadows, and there's True Life, I'm a Pro Wrestler on MTV, which is probably one of the most eminently quotable television shows in the history of television.
I've always myself been a partisan of the Steve Allen narrated The Unreal History of Professional Wrestling.
But that one doesn't have Tony Atlas asking for a cellophane. So,
as I've said, I've always been a fan of that.
So, we're just gonna go right into it. So, right now,
right here, right now, was that EMF for one of them people?
Yeah, I think that was Jesus Jones.
Yeah,
we're gonna do this like they do it in Stop Making Sense, where the Tom Tom Club transforms into the Talking Heads. So, right now, we're gonna take the Goods from the Woods podcast and
transform into the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
Can I be Tina Weymouth? She's awesome.
Oh, good. Can I be David Byrne? Because he's the only one whose name I know.
I was going to say, there's just the other guy, right? So we're going to, this is Goods from the Woods, and now we're going to become What Did You Learn?
This is a lot of people for us right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is supersized. What did you learn?
Yeah, the most we've ever done is 4, I think. 4 on an episode.
Oh, yeah, and it was a 2-parter because we couldn't handle... Well, it was a 10-episode show.
Yeah, that's fair for making a murderer.
Hey, hi. Welcome to What Did You Learn with Luke and Monika. I'm Monika Scott.
Oh, yeah. I'm Luke Jensen.
Don't come right when you hear this song.
What? Nothing wrong with me. Actually, this is perfectly on topic. I just recently watched SummerSlam 2001, and this was featured prominently. The announcer, Paul Heyman, kept going, well, this is going to be just like Drowning Pool. The bodies will hit the floor.
The bodies will hit the floor.
Oh, my God.
And this song actually has been featured in professional wrestling in perpetuity since
forever.
then.
Yeah. Because the one thing, we can get extended women's matches. We can get people just like being as progressive as wrestling is capable of being. But the one thing they can't leave in the goddamn dust is butt rock. Just
I'm gonna go ahead and say,
can I make a point?
We could turn off this song.
Can I make a point?
Yes.
The only progressive wrestling I ever want to see is when Teddy Roosevelt put a wrestling ring in the White House.
We are here with the Goods from the Woods. Let's go around. Say your names. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Rivers Langley.
Hi, I'm Pat Riley.
Mr. Goodnight, man of the hour, the tower of power, too sweet of a sour.
Hell yeah.
His driver's license is really big.
Yeah.
It's not the only thing. I have a big mustache, too, but they can't see that on the radio.
We're doing a crossover ep.
Yeah.
Friends Forever crossover ep.
Something we've been wanting to do for a while. I'm excited we finally get to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
it's unclear who's having who right now.
There's a lot of gratitude. The attitude of gratitude.
That's right. Yeah, that's what we're all about. The attitude of gratitude.
Exactly. If y'all don't have the attitude of gratitude, Fuck you. Can we say that?
Yeah. You can cuss on our podcast.
Excellent.
The movie we watched this week was Beyond the Mat.
Beyond the Mat. We decided we wanted to stay on brand for both podcasts, so
So we watched a documentary, which is on brand for us.
yeah, and we can't stop ourselves from talking about wrestling, even though it's not technically a wrestling podcast. So yeah, so I thought this would be the perfect one.
This is the perfect one. I don't know the first thing about wrestling, I'll be honest. So this was a real education for me.
Yeah.
I have a real entry level understanding of wrestling.
Yeah, as soon as I thought of this documentary, I realized immediately, like, oh, it's pretty dark. This is pretty.
Oh yeah.
Holy
it
shit.
Sure is.
Is this the first time you've seen this?
Yeah,
Luke?
I've never seen it before.
Oh man, this was like a blockbuster cult classic back in the day.
Was
like there was
it?
always one copy
Yeah.
of this movie at Blockbuster, and it was always checked out in the late 90s. So,
Really?
like, I swear, man. Yeah, it was like a thing, like to have seen this film when it came out.
Because the thing about this is that professional wrestling is somewhat popular as a kind of a cult thing,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a niche thing nowadays. Like there's a small group of fans now, but they're really
most of them are
hardcore.
LA-based comedians.
Yeah, most of them are Los Angeles-based comedians. But
I'm never going to make it if I don't get into wrestling.
but the thing about it was when Beyond the Mat came out, this was when professional wrestling was absolutely the biggest thing
Yeah.
in media at the time.
100%,
Like,
yeah.
there
Well,
was
that
two
in South Park is
Well, yeah,
what they
there
said in
was
the
a-
movie.
You mentioned
Yeah.
that.
And I wasn't watching neither of them.
Oh, man.
It was they brought up the point that the number two biggest license when it came to merchandise and memorabilia and stuff at the time, number one was South Park, and number two was professional wrestling. And if you watch professional
So many
wrestling
South Park shirts.
from that era, so many South Park shirts, so many signs with South Park characters.
Yeah, you
on
know
them.
what?
Yeah.
That's familiar imagery to me. Even just
yeah.
like the wrestling signs with the South Park stuff. on
There was a professional wrestler who
Golga.
was. His whole gimmick was that he was really into Cartman.
Yeah.
it. Really?
Yeah.
His name was Golga. His the most famous moniker he wrestled under was Earthquake.
Yeah.
Okay.
John Tenta.
Wait, Golga was his real name?
No, Golga
No.
was his.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Basically, he's been.
I was like, I have so many more
he was Greek,
questions.
yeah.
yeah. No, this guy he'd been the Shark. He'd been
Avalanche.
Earthquake. He'd been the Avalanche, and then in 98, 99, he joined a group called the Oddities, and they put a mask.
A wrestling group?
A wrestling group, a stable, and they put a mask on him and called him Golga.
Well, can I say that he was best known as Earthquake? But it was one of them things when he left the WWF, he couldn't use the name Earthquake anymore, so he went through a
okay.
bunch of names. That happened to a lot of guys.
So the names get copywritten
Yeah.
through the
For the most part.
How is it then that like CM Punk has been able to still call himself CM
He
Punk?
owns the trademark to his own name. So
Yeah.
there's certain wrestlers that own the trademark to their own
Okay.
There's
names.
certain
And-
wrestlers who were like super savvy in the
Yeah,
beginning.
and I think the most famous of them was the Ultimate Warrior, who actually changed his name to Warrior
Right.
in order to be called the Warrior when he got fired from the WWF.
Yeah,
That's
In the old
the
days,
move
though,
of
guys.
a crazy person.
Yeah. No, but it was a legal thing. You
Yeah.
understand? Legal thing. In the old days, guys could keep their name because they came up with them on their own and they used them everywhere. That's why
Right.
Sergeant Slaughter was always Sergeant Slaughter and certain guys like that. Ric Flair is always Ric Flair.
yeah. And just recently, there's been a trend where wrestlers who come in from other companies get to keep their name, basically under the thought like, okay, well, we can either make money on merchandising today or in 3 months when I get my new name over.
yeah.
When the crowd remembers who I am.
Right.
And so that's been
Yeah, because
just
it would
recently.
make more sense to just let him keep the names.
Yeah, and I think that's always just been, you met.
But it was there complications with like writers and stuff like that? Are there writers writing the stories,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's,
So
yeah.
was that part of the why there was like copyright issues? Was it like someone else's intellectual property?
Vince wanted to have the copyright on it for merchandising, for action
Interesting.
figures and things like. And in those
Vince
days,
also he was such a character.
Oh, Vince is insane.
well, you see that in the movie. In those days, though, at the time of this movie, though, they hadn't gone straight to writers. It's still mostly bookers and things.
Well, Vince Russo shows up in this movie at one point.
Yeah, but
Who's
not
Vince
like
Russo?
outside writers, though. It's
Yeah.
still mostly in business people.
So Russo was the head writer of WWF during this era.
Okay.
And
Got
basically, he became sort of infamous because he quit WWF and jumped ship to the competition, which was WCW at the end of '98. And once he got to WCW, he was basically just given free reign because they paid a ton of money trying to bolster WCW, and they were like, well, let's poach Vince's head writer, the guy who they thought had been bringing him all this success. And as soon as he got to WCW, they didn't rein him in like the way Vince did.
Right.
And so he put himself in storylines. He became a competitor. Like he went.
Which didn't Vince kind of do that with himself?
Vince, exactly. Yeah,
but
precisely.
Vince McMahon is also shredded.
Yeah,
he's
Vince
like
is like-
ripped and shredded.
It was funny. So was he a wrestler before he
No.
took over the
No,
company?
He was
so he
an
just
announcer.
Yeah,
so
his-
very few.
Interesting.
Very few people knew. I mean, up until basically until the dawn of the internet.
Yeah.
Very few people knew that Vince McMahon, the guy announcing most of the matches, and he was the play-by-play. He wasn't even the color announcer. He was just the very straight down the middle, boring
Whoa,
play-by-play
okay.
guy. And very few people, except for people close to the biz, knew that he was the guy who owned the whole thing.
I have to say that's a popular myth.
Is that right?
Yeah, everybody knew that Vince owned it. They just never admitted it on air because when wrestling became big in the mid 80s with Hulk Hogan and WrestleMania and all that, Vince would do the interviews
Oh,
for
yeah,
like Sports Illustrated, and Vince would go on David
okay.
Letterman and stuff like that.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
At the time, professional wrestling. So there was two major organizations: World Championship Wrestling
Yeah.
and the WWF. And we have a disaster.
Knock a washboard off the wall.
What
But
a
they were-
fun detail.
But they were the two biggest shows on cable at the time.
Yeah.
Like they were pulling television ratings. Regularly Monday Night Raw would get a 6 score for their ratings,
That's
which is
crazy.
which is insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was out like they were competing with like the NFL when it came to ratings. They would never outdraw
shit.
Monday Night Football, but they were keeping
they'd get-
parity with
yeah.
like Sunday Night Football, for example. So
Holy
they were the
shit.
biggest things on cable at the time, and it was a big like merchandising bellwether moment where essentially everybody knew who Steve Austin, The Rock, all these people were.
I was watching this movie and I was like, I know all of these names,
Yeah.
and I've
Yeah.
never seen any of this.
But nobody knew really. Like nowadays, people are savvy with like social media and Twitter.
Right.
It's all kind of left out into the open. Even at that point, people didn't know that who these people were, what their real lives were like, what it was
Right.
like
Yeah.
behind the curtain
Beyond
in
the
the gorilla
mat.
position. So nowadays. It's known, but back then, something like Beyond the Mat was actually very illustrative to people as to how professional wrestling was because there was
Yeah.
a large degree of curiosity surrounding
yeah,
that.
totally. It was crazy well made.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
What era, I assume it was well before this, was it like widely known that professional wrestling was scripted?
People have always known it was fake just by watching it. It's
From the
only
very,
fans
very
that
beginning.
thought
Because
it
it's
was real.
ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you know
what?
Strictly speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
But people have always known it was fake. You can look at old newsreel stuff
Yeah.
from the 40s, and they don't take it serious. People
Yeah.
always know it's
Sure,
fake.
yeah.
They just never admitted it on the air.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of actually, it was kind of set in stone that it was fake because Vince McMahon actually. Because back in the day, professional wrestling was oversought by state athletic commissions, and they had to pay
Oh,
taxes and be under the regulation of the state athletic commission.
So just like boxing.
Like boxing, mixed martial arts, kickboxing, things like that. So in order to circumvent the taxes and
yeah.
the levies that are placed with state athletic commissions, Vince McMahon basically was out and was like, "Oh, this is not wrestling. This is sports entertainment." You know, and there are still some states
Very
that,
solid McMahon.
that regulate. So New York still regulates professional wrestling under the athletic commission. Maine does. There's a few other ones, but to get around that sort of thing and to get around the taxes of it and it being considered a sport, they legally kind of said that this is fake, even though people knew that like this is staged, unless it was like a kid or like, you know, a super redneck or, you know,
Right.
or like
Yeah.
a grandma
Just someone who
or
wasn't
something like that.
savvy,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But the characters, there was a large degree of gray areas to how much this person's actually playing a character or how much is Hulk Hogan really like Hulk Hogan outside of wrestling.
Right.
Yeah, and from his sex tape, we know not at all. Actually, just a
Ew.
sad man.
But he's still orange.
Except, he's still orange, and
He's still
and
orange,
I would imagine Hulk Hogan in wrestling would feel very guilty and lethargic after eating tons of ribs as well. So.
I feel pretty damn good, to be honest with you.
Oh, you know that pork. I feel like a pig, brother.
He looked like a couple of pigs rolling around in a blanket, some kind of orange blanket.
Does Vince McMahon still own everything?
Oh, yeah, with a steel fucking fist. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Are the numbers similar?
For ratings?
No.
Like ratings and money. What about money? It seems like the money's
gone. The ratings have gone down, and the money has gone way up.
Yeah,
basically,
that's
like it's an
that
interesting.
feels accurate
because
I think
don't know why.
corporations just kind of build like that, like it's economics or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, they say it in the movie is that they they went public. They had a public stock.
Oh, that's
offering.
right. The
Public,
IPO.
if you will.
Yeah.
And that has affected wrestling. I mean that might be like the biggest. That might be the catalyst for the biggest change in wrestling. Is
What
that
changed?
that you have because they can't really do the level of violence that you see
Because it's publicly
because
traded?
they have stockholders to answer to. So the thing where you see in the
interesting.
film where you see Mick Foley getting handcuffed and getting hit on the head with a chair like a million times, like they have dialed that back because now because they're a publicly traded company and all that like concussion kind of shit is in the news.
Yeah.
They have people from the public who might not even necessarily be wrestling fans who are just have a financial stake in being like, hey, maybe we shouldn't show a guy getting horrendously concussed on the air. And that's been...
at the time that movie was made, the violence level in professional wrestling was probably at its peak.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was insane.
And also, and also the now WWE, they're really... when it comes to their revenue is up because they're widely diversified. Like, there's different little sets. So they're merchandising.
Movie
and
studio.
their movie studio doesn't make much. See No Evil didn't really rake in that much cash. Or
do they make
the Marine
what are
5.
the
Yeah.
movies?
Produced Oculus.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you saw it at the beginning. Vince McMahon, we make movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't even know what that. I was like, what are you even talking
But-
about?
Yeah.
But their television rights fees, so they're really diversified. Back then, it was more like they had merchandise money coming in, but they were a wrestling company.
Right.
They were essentially a wrestling company. That was their main bread and butter. Now, wrestling is part of the wider package. Now, when it comes to their ratings are terrible. Actually, their ratings are actually the lowest they've been since like
Really?
the 1996, 1997 before they had their boom.
But the thing about that is
Oh
that,
man,
that
on
ratings...
Twitter you wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that
Yeah.
ratings across the board are down.
Yeah,
because
everybody's
people
ratings are
don't
down.
watch TV anymore. I mean, having a 2 million people watching your show is not bad,
Right.
But compared to the 6, 7, 8, sometimes million people
Right.
watching wrestling back in the late 90s,
Of course.
it's a precipitous drop. But the truth is that because they've now got most of their shit's on on Hulu,
Right.
and then the stuff that isn't on Hulu is on. They have their own.
Network?
Netflix like
Network.
Oh, they have their own like streaming service.
So when you came over and we were watching
Yeah, yeah.
WrestleMania,
oh yeah, I watched some of wrestling.
yeah, you and Paige sat.
It was extraordinarily confusing for me.
It was extraordinarily
ate chips.
crowded, and I was extraordinarily high, and it was extraordinarily hot.
I mostly ate fried chicken.
I was going to say, yeah. But that was what we were watching it on, was their network. So they've switched from this pay-per-view.
Interesting. So like, are you subscribed to their streaming service?
Since day one. Yeah, since it started. Yeah.
You're a company man.
Fuck yeah.
Did you have a countdown like on your phone
No,
to when it released?
no, I guess not
To
since
when
day
they
one. I wait,
flip the switch.
I waited a couple weeks, I guess. So,
Yeah, my experience watching WrestleMania was like it felt like watching a Fast and Furious movie from halfway through. Because
Because the acting was really bad.
because everybody was really invested.
And The Rock was in it,
Like
too.
and The Rock was there.
because everybody was really invested in everything that happened, but because I didn't understand, it just felt like senseless violence.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I was like,
Like the Bernie rally.
it was, but it seemed fun. I wished I knew what was happening.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, ideally, and it's one of the reasons I like wrestling so much is that you should.
It's still fun.
Well, yeah, you should be able to just watch it, and based on what's on screen,
Like-
you should be able to tell, like, oh, this guy, I fucking hate this dude.
Right,
This dude's
yeah,
the
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Like, you
It's
know.
like you could dive into also any like shitty reality show and kind of have
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
same opinions
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
quickly.
Oh,
I
yeah.
only really remember that there were like a lot of dudes that jumped out of a cereal box.
And they were dressed like Dragon Ball
And they
Z.
were dressed anime characters.
Wait, now that you mentioned Dragon Ball Z, actually, I haven't watched.
Luke has been waiting for this moment.
I haven't. I think I watched maybe like a Raw or a SmackDown like a year ago. Was probably like the last time I watched wrestling.
Yeah.
And it really felt like watching a really long episode of Dragon Ball Z, where they just like kind of like build up and just kind of talk, and you're just like, all right, let's go. And then you know what I mean, where they'd have
It's
whole
all
episodes
talking
of
and
Dragon
no
Ball Z,
fighting,
right?
like Dragon Ball Z.
Exactly. It's all like next time on Dragon Ball Z, and then
Right.
I want to see some sweat and some man meat.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I missed that episode of Dragon Ball Z.
I just want to see some abs slapping together.
Yeah, I
That's what I watch wrestling for.
Or some concussions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ideally.
Oh,
Which this movie had tons
Oh
of.
my god.
Oh my god.
Tons of concussions in this movie.
Oh god, so many. I had heard the name Mankind and I didn't really understand if that was even a person until I saw this movie.
Yeah.
And he was the best person alive.
He still is.
Yeah.
Still is.
I'm glad he's still alive. There was
Yeah.
I say I prefer Terry Funk.
there was just a part of me that was super worried he's dead now.
Yeah, he's not only is he still around, he's actually got coming out on the WWE network a reality show where it's just him and his now grown children hanging out. Like,
Yeah,
so-
the little blonde girl is now trained to be a pro wrestler,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
she's
no,
like really
really?
into
the
pro
one,
wrestling.
Yeah, the one they had to like carry out of the
That
event
scene
is fucking
is a
horrific.
fucking nightmare.
Yeah. But what I liked about it, and the part that I had forgotten, because I always, whenever I think about this movie,
Yeah.
that's the scene that probably sticks out the most, is where Mick Foley is handcuffed and The Rock just keeps hitting him in the head with
And
a
the-
chair.
and their wives and children.
And I believe the Rock was wearing his poncho, right?
He was.
because that's when he was getting his breast reduction surgery.
yeah,
He had breast reduction
Yeah.
surgery.
yeah. I think they he has like plastic like pecs
Yeah.
because he's Samoan, so he had like man boobs,
Boobies.
and so he got breast reduction surgery. And
but-
This
that's
is why The Rock is a disgrace to wrestling, because Kamala went out there, Dusty Rhodes went out there, Abdullah the Butcher went out there with titties down to the abdomen.
but that's why he's wearing that weird outfit. But yeah, that's the thing I always think about, is them taking those kids out that are just like horrified, obviously, and justifiably horrified by seeing their dad get hit with a chair. But the part I had forgotten about is where the filmmaker goes to Florida
and makes them watch it
and
again.
shows it, and Foley's reaction is great because he is a man of his word, because he's watching. He goes, maybe I should just be the guy who pulls the sock out of
Yeah.
my tights, and that's exactly what he did. Like,
Oh,
that-
really?
I mean, he had some like intense matches, but that was the height of.
Yeah.
he never got more extreme than that. Like,
Right.
Well, I don't
You know.
know about that. He had one match where he got slammed through a flaming table.
was that after that?
Yeah, it was after that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't twice.
It wasn't like 50
Also,
times.
like
then
that actually
thumbtacks.
sounds like maybe a little mild because the table is a little bit fucked up.
Yeah.
right.
Just go straight through. You're
People
fine.
don't realize this. Those two falls aren't at the end. That's at the beginning of the match.
Oh, where he
then they
falls off the
wrestle
cage.
a
Oh, when he
full
falls?
brutal match, which ends with people being slammed into a thumbtacks that are put on the ring.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
after them two
What?
falls, they wrestled a whole match.
Although my favorite part of that match, so they don't. I don't think they show the match.
Yeah, they
in, okay.
Yeah,
The best part
the part
was
where
that
Foley is, like,
my
gets thrown
favorite
off the
part
cage.
of that match with the big cage where
Yeah.
Mick Foley gets thrown off, Mankind gets thrown off. Terry Funk, who features prominently in
Yes.
Beyond
the guy who's
Behind the Mat,
retiring.
comes out to protect Mick Foley, and he looks amazing. He's wearing like sweatpants and like 1980s LA gear, like high
Yay.
tops. Like he looks like he just ran out of Walmart and ran all the way to the
Oh my
arena
God.
to save his friend. The Undertaker picks him up and chokeslams him. And when he chokeslams him, Terry Funk starts going into false convulsions, like faux convulsions, and kicks off his LA gears. Like he's been like just put through the worst trauma ever. It's just like, oh, and his like LA gears.
Oh my God.
That's my favorite spot in the match.
You see a lot of good casual funk fashion if you watch this movie.
Yeah, you really do. He's got a lot of t-shirts tucked into sweatpants.
Yeah, and very Zuba, like
Yeah.
sweatpants, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of very tight ponytails and the wet look with his hair.
That was maybe one of my favorite parts when he had the squirty bottle and
yeah,
he
he was
was
wetting
wetting
his
his
hair.
That's the
hair a
Mr.
little
Perfect
bit
look,
more.
I call it.
Wetting his hair over the bandana.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a
Oh,
special moment.
That is, people still do that actually all the time. It makes for a really interesting situation when they're not wearing wrestling gear. Like a couple of weeks ago, Seth Rollins, who's one of the big stars, came back. It was he'd had basically his entire knee completely fucked up. So he'd been out of the ring for like almost like 7 months. Comes back, big return. His hair is soaking wet, and he's wearing a suit. Like an all black suit, and there's just water all over his shoulders.
And it's not even
so gross.
yeah, but it's not even water. In order to do that properly, you have to use like baby oil and stuff to make it like extra glistening.
Yeah, so his whole suit is just covered in like goo.
His
The whole
oily
shield.
suit.
It's so weird.
The whole shield always looked like they just got out of the pool or something.
Does everybody still do the wet hair thing? Does
All
yeah.
the guys with the long hair. do.
These guys do in particular.
yeah.
Yeah.
My mother watched pro wrestling with me very recently, and she, on a few occasions she referred to particular wrestlers as the wet guy. And
You know what? That's super fair.
And the wetter guy. So Roman Reigns was the wetter guy.
I was gonna say he's probably the wettest guy on the
Yeah,
show
yeah.
now that Triple H cut his hair.
I didn't end up watching the rest of it because we had to watch Masterpiece Theater. So
Is that real?
what, Masterpiece Theater?
No, that your mom that you guys had to stop watching wrestling to watch Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah.
that is so funny.
Because my wife gets veto power and Selfridges was on, and
You know what? She's right.
Yeah, I know. It's Jeremy Piven in a serious role, actually doing well. Who'd have thought that he's an actual actor? Holy Christ!
Speaking of hair, woo,
Oh yeah.
so fake.
Woof. One of the things I wrote down, because I don't know him in the context of wrestling, is what was The Rock's deal? That was my whole question.
what was
But what
the-
I really mean
Yeah,
is,
so
what
what-
is the character?
So what did you kind of read as being the Rock's deal?
Well, I don't know. So he seemed to be doing like a Texas-y accent.
Yeah, he
which
sounded
was-
super weird.
Yeah,
Well,
which was confusing to me.
And he was a heel at the time.
Oh,
Yeah, this was kind of before he was real big.
Yeah.
Before he became a big star, and he was still a bad guy that was getting big momentum, wasn't
Actually,
it?
I would say this film was when I'd say he hit his
97.
First, well, it
So wasn't he
starts in-
still in Nation of Domination?
Well, no, but
This
it
is 99.
starts at 97. They started filming the movie in 1997, but the part that you see The Rock in prominently
that's not the same year?
No, the part you see him prominently in is Royal Rumble 99, and I would say that is when him and Austin
I
are
wondered
probably like neck and neck in terms of popularity. That is like
Yeah.
and he was the reason he talks like that is because The Rock is from Florida. That's his actual voice. What you hear The Rock talking like now
What?
has the southern accent coached completely out of
Yeah.
him, but he had that voice like
Really?
Oh yeah.
I was like, is he doing a weird fake accent
actually,
in this?
he's actually when he came into pro wrestling at first, like he was a relatively soft-spoken guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
he
he
was
seemed like it a little bit, even like in the parts with the kids. Like,
Yeah, I love it
it's
when
all
he's-
very heartwarming and sweet, and he's
Right.
like being sweet with the kids, and
when he's talking to Foley, he's just like, he's like, oh yeah, and we're gonna get The Rock out there, and he's just a big piece of shit.
yeah, I loved that.
Or he talks about himself as if it's
Yeah.
a different guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's Dwayne.
He's Dwayne, yeah.
He's really just in the hearts of hearts. He's Dwayne Johnson.
Yep.
He's yeah.
But no, The Rock,
Dewey.
when he was first brought out, he was the goodest good guy in the history of good guys. Like they, I mean, literally, were
He
just like they built.
looked absurd.
They wanted him to
he
be like a
had-
Boy Scouty
He
kind
had
of
the
character.
highest high top haircut ever.
Yeah, I think
Like,
I've
they were-
seen photos
yeah,
of
they
that.
kinda do this
of
weird
that era.
thing where he's like, they gave him a Rocky Maivia, which his father's name was Rocky Johnson, and his no, I mean that doesn't even sum that up. I mean, in this one he looks
that's
amazing
pretty
with
good.
his
He does have his
turtleneck and his.
Turtleneck. Oh yeah, this is a pretty famous picture.
But
Black
if-
turtleneck, chain,
He wore,
Fanny pack.
but
thumb
He looks like those.
cresting that fanny pack so gently.
Yeah.
He looks like he's in Boys to Men or something like that.
when he came out, he wore like this ridiculous outfit where it looked like
Oh,
like
what
he's-
is that?
I have no idea.
Is
That,
he
that's
like a-
wet.
Oh, look at
that's
that
some wet
hair.
hair.
Is he like a jester of some
he's,
sort?
he's supposed to be like
It's like an homage to Samoa, but it's
He looks like a French jester.
I think it's supposed to be like a Polynesian sort of thing. Like
It is not.
It's a Polynesian gesture. He makes fun of the big chief.
he was the jester in King Kamehameha's court.
Yeah.
You know, but he smiled a lot.
Yeah, see again, this is very like this like Harlequin print
Yeah,
shoulder pads.
It looks like he's into professional wrestling and Ren fairs and only got one outfit.
Oh my god. That is exactly what
But
it is.
yeah, he's
if you smell what the Rin is cooking,
and it's probably turkey legs.
it's definitely turkey
Even though
legs
there's
and-
no
and
turkeys
kettle
in-
corn.
But the iteration of The Rock that we were seeing in this movie.
So very quickly, it comes out as this: the crowd fucking hates him. They they literally
He
chant,
looks like a fucking nerd.
they
Go on.
they chant "Die Rocky Die" at him for a year straight.
Oh my god.
And at the end of the year, Vince McMahon basically tells him, like, this isn't working. Do whatever you want. I don't care. And that's when you really, as a wrestler, that's when you get your freedom. When the promoter decides that, like, whatever they had originally tinned for you isn't working and they give it to you, that is your chance to grab the fucking ring
So-
and do whatever you want. So The Rock cuts this famous promo where he turns on the crowd.
Well, not only that, he
basically.
joins the Black Militant group.
That's right. Yeah, they had a sort of Black Panther / Nation of Islam stable called the Nation of Domination.
Oh my god.
With a bunch of black wrestlers who used to have sort of like gimmicky characters and are now going by sort of vaguely black Muslim names like Farouk and Kama Mustafa and shit like that.
Okay.
And he joins them, and basically that's when he turns into The Rock. He starts referring to himself, instead of Rocky Maivia, starts calling himself The Rock, and that's when he kind of picks up that catchphrase, "If you smell what The Rock is
He
cooking."
kind of turns into Rod Treadwell and Jerry Maguire in a way.
Yeah, that's actually a great. Yeah,
Yeah.
sort of does Cuba Gooding Jr.
okay, yeah.
That's sort of what he is, where he's just like this, much sought after professional athlete.
Deion Sanders,
who's like a
but
total
not as,
egomaniac.
But the outfit is confusing then
Oh,
to me.
well, that's what
He
he's,
doesn't wear
because
that anymore.
well,
stops
no,
wearing
he
this.
stops wearing this, but in the movie he's got the sunglasses and like kind of
like a silk shirt.
a silk. I mean, he looks like an agent.
Yeah, well,
He
I
looks
think
like a sleazy
Well,
Hollywood agent.
he was getting ready for his HBO series Ballers very early. But no, he would
I had
always
an urge to watch Ballers.
he dressed in this weird
That's
sort of like
embarrassing.
he was
Fuck you.
this was like prime Versace era.
dude, his outfits were amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted to convey that you
wow.
were something, you'd wear a high-tech Versace, like $500.
You
You
can
know
see
what?
a football player
You
wearing
still do
this,
that.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, I think the idea is like, this is what everyone kind of imagines, like
An asshole to dress like?
an athlete,
Yeah.
like an
Yeah,
athlete
yeah.
to go out to a club and dress like this. This is what people expect. So
Interesting.
That was
So
kind of his
that's what the
thing.
character was.
Is just a real arrogant.
The bar for like what a character is in this universe is confusing, especially after the guy that you just showed me with like a leather mask and a Cartman shirt.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess that's a personality.
I mean, it's what I like about wrestling so much is you can have just like a guy who's just like, hey, I'm Jim, whatever, Jim Smith, and I just rolled off the whatever, and I'm just here to like wrestle for America.
I'm a farmer. Here's my overalls.
Right, and then you could have like just a very like normal kind of choose your own player guy, or you can have a demon from hell.
Yeah,
Who wrestles
that is pretty fun.
I love that.
Then what was Mankind's? Why did he have a mask on?
So that's a fun story. Do
Yeah.
you know that one?
So this is actually really interesting. He wrestled for the longest time. So Mick Foley wrestled for the longest time as his character Cactus Jack, where
I love this name. Go on.
he wore pants very much like yours.
I'm wearing
a lot of
leopard print
Yeah.
pants right
actually,
now.
you are wearing
I
Cactus
am
Jack
dressed
pants.
like Peg Bundy, just
Yeah,
so everybody
and so
knows.
he dressed kind of like he was kind of like an outlaw sort of guy and was really crazy, wild, violent outlaw sort of guy. But also he doesn't have much in the way of a athletic body. He's not a ripped up, shredded up guy.
No,
Yeah.
that's
He's
definitely clear at all times in this movie.
He's really engaging. He could talk very well. He could cut really good promos, do really good interviews, and put on really good, captivating matches that are very psychological. So when they brought him into the WWF, because he was wrestling in ECW, which they had mentioned.
The really violent one.
Yeah,
The one
which
that
we'll
Paul
talk
Heyman
about.
edits in his mom's basement.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah.
The best part of the movie is when they said ECW was run like a commune. I was like, yeah, no shit, because nobody got paid.
As Paul Heyman's mom is ironing in the background. But so they brought him in, and Vince McMahon did not really like wasn't into Mick Foley as a character. He didn't get him. He didn't get Cactus Jack. He really didn't like the Cactus Jack character.
Yeah.
And Jim Ross, who was in the movie,
He's the guy who's like, they just need an ass every 18 inches.
Yeah, the guy, we need an ass every 18 inches. He was like, you have to. So he kind of pushed to hire him. So originally they were going to bring him in, and Mick Foley tells a good version of this. They were going to bring him in as a mutilator. So it's like, we've had assassins, we've had road warriors, but we've never had a mutilator, and that's what you are. And they're originally going to name him Mason the Mutilator, which
Mason is such a sissy name.
That's
That's a little boy with like weird allergies.
yeah, I know.
That's a little boy who complains when he doesn't get Capri Sun after his soccer game.
To be fair, I thought they were going for a Manson thing because at one point he was
it
Cactus
sounds like
Jack
it.
Manson, and his original gimmick was kind of like Manson.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like Charlie, but
Mason definitely sounds
Mason
like
the Mutilator
Mason is gluten free.
yeah, Mason the Mutilator sounds like some serial killer that was raised in Brentwood.
Yeah,
That's essentially what it was. You know, the Brentwood slasher, Mason the Mutilator. But no, so they kind of gave him this Hannibal Lecter character that would like inflict pain on himself. And at first he was just like he had no
Psycho.
incredible tolerance. He was like a masochist. That was his character, a masochist. And then they started doing these interviews where they started kind of peeling back the layers of the onion as to why Mick Foley, the kid that was raised in Long Island, who wanted to be Dude Love, that was like kind of a nerd in high school, turned into this character who was a complete just a head case.
Yeah.
And that's where you started to see a little bit of the blurring where it's like, oh, this is a very erudite, articulate, very well-educated guy who just does this. And it blurred the character. So basically what you saw there was like, and then there was a comedy edge kind of thrown in there as well because he was trying to please people, and people really got this sort of underdog, weird sense of humor guy.
He ended up being appealing.
People love dude. Yeah, I would say Mankind, it's definitely The Rock and Austin you're going to have that argument for number one, but whoever you land on for 1 and 2, Mick Foley in that era was number 3.
Hey, the guy has been on 30 Rock a couple of times.
That's right. Yeah.
What he has?
Yeah.
Dude, Mick Foley's the shit, man.
Because he slept with somebody.
Isn't he? He's a touring comedian now, right?
Yeah, well,
what?
So he does.
And like any celebrity that's gone into comedy, his stuff is gold.
He tours with his he calls it a one-man show now. I think when he started off, he was like,
sure. Well, he's a very
like,
fancy New Yorker.
Well, I think when he started off, he was like, yeah, I'm doing comedy, and then some comedians must have been like, yeah, this is just you telling stories about wrestling. He's like, oh, okay. So now he's calling it a one-man show.
It's kind of more of a lecture.
Yeah, it's like a lecture
storytelling.
It's the same kind of comedy Henry Rollins does.
Exactly.
Oh no.
Yeah, but his records ain't that funny. They're bad.
But yeah,
is it a good show? Have any of you seen it or heard reviews?
They
of
have the version that they filmed down in Florida on the network, and I've watched it. Yeah, I mean, it's I would say the stories are more entertaining than they are funny.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he's a good storyteller.
That's to be expected.
Yeah,
I think.
It's pretty much exactly what you would expect if a guy who got hit in the head for a living started telling road
He repeats
stories.
it halfway through,
He falls asleep.
and they keep it in the special.
Authenticity. It's all about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? I really dominated this conversation because I was confused.
What did you learn, Luke?
I made one note in my phone, and it just says Mr.
says-
Ass. It was just in the background of one shot. You just see a guy walk through with, on the back of his shirt, it says Mr. Ass.
Oh boy.
It's like in the back halls.
You've entered into a rabbit hole, Luke Jensen.
Is this a guy?
So I know that this is your bit, but I'm gonna play a song that both of you will hate.
Ooh, I gotta put
hope
the
you hate
headphones
it.
on.
Fuck
Oh man,
you.
this is.
you're gonna love it.
So,
this is
so the guy,
Mr.
so the
Ass?
guy in question is named Billy Gunn, who was in a tag team with a guy named
That's
It
familiar.
was Billy and Bart Gunn. They were called like what
The smoking
Smoking
Guns.
and they were kind of like
Cowboys.
Texas Cowboys.
But they was lame.
They was lame. And then Billy Gunn, who was clearly the better of the two, broke off, joined a faction called.
Well, he actually had a slight detour as Rockabilly.
Oh God,
where
that's
he
right.
would he was managed by an Elvis impersonator.
Hey, is that guy looking for new clients? Or?
Oh, you mean the honky tonk man?
he basically his gimmick was that he was essentially Rockabilly's gimmick was essentially that he was
talking about
he was a
Rockabilly.
male version of the protagonist of the animated movie Rock-a-Doodle-Doo.
So he was Glenn Campbell.
So, and then he eventually becomes this character, Badass Billy Gunn, where he's just whatever. And then somehow, Badass Billy Gunn, that story is well told. Badass Billy Gunn just becomes Mr. Ass.
He got less into the bad and more into the ass.
more into the ass aspect, and this
What?
and
Names contract, as in the way Rocky Maivia became The Rock.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
and this I have to play it from the very very beginning because that part is crucial,
Important.
very crucial. So yeah, and this was his theme song.
I'm a nice man. Yeah, I'm a nice man.
It's basically "Don't Stop Believing."
What about butts?
Oh my God, it is Don't Stop Believing.
Wait,
I love to kick 'em. I love to shove 'em.
What the fuck is this?
Is this
talking about
picture?
butts.
This picture is Mr. Ass.
that's him. Yeah.
I love to pick
Was this guy big?
and I'm gonna kick 'em.
This is truly before the era of songs about asses, too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a real pioneer.
I heard them play this shit at a strip club one time.
I think you said that you heard him play at a strip club, and that's when you knew you had to move out of Massachusetts.
Actually, that was the White Zombie Burn the Witches song.
Oh, that was
yeah.
Dracula.
But it's the same ethos.
yeah.
This song is basically if "Don't Stop Believing" and
Was worse.
was combined with Sir Mix-a-Lot's "I Like Big Butts"
Yeah, but Sir Mix-a-Lot never has weird lines where he's like, "I like to pick 'em
and lick 'em.
and lick 'em and stick 'em,"
What?
which I guess
Hey, that's
It was ambiguous.
but
It is, a
also
little bit.
also he's kind of a trailblazer in that sort of way because that's like the thing now, right?
Yeah, there are a
If
lot
I
of
read
songs.
Cosmopolitan correctly.
Lots of songs about asses.
Yeah.
I stopped reading Cosmopolitan when they stopped having articles about the Battle of Gettysburg in it.
Maybe, I mean, in his defense, maybe by pick 'em he simply means selecting.
to select. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
to select an
Yeah,
ass.
not to like scratch your butt, but to select from a wide buffet.
I like to select them. Doesn't sound super good. I like to select them.
Were you talking about Pick'em?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Socrates observed the connection between pleasure and pain. Maybe when he's got a wedgie, the relief makes the whole thing worthwhile, and that's why I like to pick him.
Because he's
That
an
could
ass
be what
man.
it is.
But yeah, that was
He
I
that's,
think I've solved it.
He likes to cause relief to asses
And I think- I
all
think
over
that-
the
Well,
place.
his own. He's got that little purple thing on there, and it's riding up his ass. and
Yeah.
I can't wait to pick it.
This photo of him is very like, hey.
what a Fonzie pose.
There's also did you get to the line where he goes, "So many asses, so little time."
And that is the eternal struggle, is it not?
A cogent point, though. So many asses.
So believe it or not,
It is when you're an ass man.
believe it or not, Mr. Ass was a year ago was one half of the tag team champions.
Yeah.
That's
What?
Yeah, that's
He was
how-
still around?
He was also the Florida
around.
State Seniors weightlifting champion.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
He's
Does he still
around.
go by Mr. Ass?
Wrestling.
He goes by
right?
Badass Billy Gunn, and
this
yeah,
is
he still wears tights that say Mr. Ass.
So he's a senior in school now.
No, like he's senior age group. And then he lost the title because they
He's a senior
tested
in high
his pee
school.
and found out that he was
Juicing.
juicing bad.
Juicing that
A lot.
ass.
I mean, I imagine there's probably a lot of medication going on the seniors weightlifting tournament. A lot of them test positive for Xaralto too, and that shit's dangerous.
Flomax, Flomax gets that blood flowing, and you get the power from.
It keeps my stream going, is what it is.
When did you see Mr. Ass in this movie?
He's in the background.
Yeah, he
I
just
missed
he
him
just walks
entirely.
by in the background, and I just saw Mr. Ass on the back of his shirt, and I was
You
like, "Well,
just
that's
were-
my note for this movie."
Well, I have that one question.
Yeah.
Do you watch wrestling? Have you watched much wrestling?
No, not really.
Cool,
When
you're-
I was younger,
Cool, really interesting. Anyway.
Fuck you. When I was a kid, my friend had like a ton of wrestling figures, and we would play with those a lot. So that's where most of, if
Your
any,
knowledge.
wrestling knowledge I have comes from.
I really love that you almost said figurines and you bailed on it.
Yeah, well, is that too highfalutin?
It makes it sound like they're little glass.
Little
like-
painted ones that
A
I
they
go to
little
my
like
glass
friend's
spirals
house and
of
we'd play with
painting.
his figurines and his collector plates.
Play with his little porcelain undertaker.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I also didn't know the first thing about Jake the Snake, and what a harsh set of
Now you
lessons.
wish you didn't.
Yeah, what a harsh series of lessons I've learned.
Oh, Jake the Snake. Actually,
Is he still alive?
He's dead,
yeah,
right?
no, he's
not
still
dead?
alive. So he's
That's
there's
honestly
actually-
so
There's
shocking.
there's a documentary actually called The Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts about him
Getting sober.
Oh,
and
really?
losing a ton of weight. Like he was up to the point where he was like 350 pounds and he couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And was
350 pounds and smoking crack, which I didn't
Yeah.
know was possible.
Yeah, it seems
Wow.
like
so
He's an innovator.
yeah, he got tied in with this wrestler named Diamond Dallas Page and
Okay,
started doing
I've heard
yoga.
it.
And they did a documentary about it that was actually
It's actually really good. I watched it.
yeah, it was I mean it was up for consideration for the Oscars actually.
really.
Yeah. So
when did that come out?
it's on Netflix this week actually.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I watched it online somewhere.
Yeah, but so Jake the Snake.
It was
yeah.
so.
what did-
This movie's reflection.
Oh,
of
what
Jake
did
the Snake was a bummer.
was it like Mr. DDT? What did that mean? Like that his fans had?
Oh yeah, I
His
didn't
finishing
understand
move.
that.
Okay.
His finishing
Oh.
move was the DDT, and it was one of those lights out finishers. So he was famous for the DDT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it stand for something or is
DDT.
Like,
Oh, like
Yeah.
that pesticide?
Yeah, it's supposed to be killer. That's why it's the DDT.
Oh, okay.
okay.
Good God, though, what a sad.
Jesus.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck. I watched guys. I watched this on a train on my phone around people. So I was like all those fucking scenes with his daughter. I was like, well,
Yeah.
I have to call my dad. I guess.
I have to. Does any of you guys know? Does he know to bend the truth every now and then? Because Jake the Snake does like to cut a promo.
Yeah. Well,
He's not one of them people. I mean, like Jake, I love you, but he's not one of the kind of people where every word that comes out of his mouth seems like the gospel truth all the time.
Yeah. They kind of they say that a little bit, don't they? They say that it's like you could never tell.
right.
Oh,
When
if you're
he
talking
was-
to him
yeah.
or his character.
The snake.
Yeah.
And it felt like he was doing the character. I mean, all those scenes in the car, it just feels like he's doing the character and not being real with the filmmaker.
Well, he actually fell even further in the documentary. Like, so there was.
Like after it?
Oh, yeah.
So there was
God.
shortly thereafter there was a wrestling pay-per-view called Heroes of Wrestling where it was all these like washed up wrestlers.
What a bad idea.
And like these guys were just like there's not a single wrestler in there that was in any sort of athletic prime. They were
my
like
God.
well past it. And it was at this place
And
called
they just died.
and it was at this place called Casino Magic, which
Nope.
I guess is some
No, no,
casino
no, no,
and
no.
some Indian reservation in the Midwest or something like that. Jake the Snake shows up in what they call in wrestling no condition to perform. He's completely drunk,
Like blitzed on crack and
he cuts this promo where he's incoherent, just like, when you're at a casino, you play games, but I like to cheat.
What?
You want to play 22? 21? I got 22. You want to play aces and eights? I got 2 of those too. You want to play gin rummy? And he's just like completely destroyed.
You know, that famous casino game.
He says to the cameraman is getting away because Jake's breath at this
Is a
point is
nightmare.
about 200 proof.
Yeah.
Cameraman, get your ass back here. DDT. DDT.
And he
Oh
tries
my
to start
God.
really drunk DDT.
And then he originally it was going to be a singles match, and Jake comes out, gets tangled up in the curtain.
Oh
Like
my
he
god!
can't navigate out of the
No.
curtain.
What?
And then he has a middle-aged woman grope his chest. His
It's the best part because he walks by her and then he stops and scoots back. And it's not like it's a pretty girl. It's not even like she's as pretty as the mom who's got DDT
Yeah.
written on her chest. She looks worse. And
Oh my God.
But Jake looks at her like she's a bag of chicken and just grabs her hands, rubs them all over his chest, and just has that. Like he just smoked a Marlboro or something.
and then he produces his snake, you know, his live python,
Yeah.
Sure.
and proceeds to
Jerk it off?
feign manual stimulation with it.
Did the
At
snake
this-
come?
It spit venom all over.
Great question.
It wasn't a cobra.
But at this,
Had a cobra at one point,
bit
and it
Macho
bit
Man.
Randy Savage, and that was just messed up,
That
even
was
for
fucked up.
wrestling.
It bit.
point-
Wait, he had a snake that bit someone.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
dragged
It was
him in?
part of the gimmick. Don't worry.
Yeah, well,
It really
Mach-
bit him though, but it was devenomized.
Yeah, Macho knew it was going to bite him, but yeah, he had a cobra.
Wait, how do you get a snake to bite someone? You starve it?
Probably,
He
yeah.
used to whack the snake all the time, whack it to make its hood pop out and
Yeah.
things. There's a lot of animal abuse.
Yeah,
backstage.
I would honestly watching all the scenes with the snake. I was like, "This is not. You're not treating this animal
I
with
will
any
say this.
level of respect."
If you look really close, though, you'll see the guy with the macaw.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can see
yeah,
it. That was Coco Beware, the Birdman.
Yeah.
And
I was super into the 1 minute of him that we saw.
he's going to get big because he came out of the Prince vault. Remember
yeah,
that?
exactly. There's a documentary that Prince produced about that wrestler with the macaw.
Yeah.
What?
That's narrated by Morris Day. That came out of the.
Yeah, dude.
So you might do an episode on that.
Yeah, it's in Prince's vault. It'll be coming out soon.
And I will say this now: Coco Beware always took good care of Frankie. However, he did die in a house fire when he was at church once. But other than that,
Oh my god!
when he was in the ring, that can happen to anybody. When he was in the ring, he
Yeah.
always took good care of Frankie, the
meant
original.
you meant the
Frankie.
bird died in the house fire, not.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
the bird did.
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Coco Beware.
I know.
Yeah, but and then at this point when he starts
Jerking off the
riding the
snake.
snake,
Yeah.
the guy that he's wrestling is like, oh crap! Like he realizes what's going on, and he just like waves out. So he's like, anybody in the back, please come out and save this. So they impromptu turn this into a tag team match.
Oh,
and
shit.
Snake Roberts is just like drunk and in a crack stupor, and he's like falling all over the place. It's a total disaster. It's actually only the second worst match in the entire show. Because there is a match in this show with the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov versus the Bushwhackers that is quite possibly one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life.
What made it so bad?
I thought it was all right. It's just not very good. There's a certain
Hot take.
No, the way wrestling fans look at wrestling sometimes, some people judge it like by how good the wrestling is. And
Right.
obviously, when you've got old people doing a show like that, it's about as good as the stuff you saw, like the old Jake the
Sure.
Snake doing in the
Yeah.
arenas then.
Yeah.
So on the wrestling level, it's terrible. On the entertainment level, it's great because a train wreck is always fun to watch.
Yeah. So, but Jake Roberts, he had a very prolonged, like, for I'd say 10 years after that documentary, he was
He
just
continued to fall.
Yeah, and actually, that part of that documentary was part of the inspiration behind the movie The Wrestler.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what? That's so funny because when I was watching, I was like, "Is this just what the wrestler was based on?"
That's exactly. what it's based
everybody
on.
says
That's so
that though, but the
interesting.
wrestler didn't have the substance abuse thing, which is a big part of the Jake story.
Well, it was
Did
the
it
thing-
not?
It was the thing about the daughter. Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this, it was he smoked crack, so
It
he
was
missed
the-
meeting with his daughter. And the wrestler, he just got really drunk with Ron Killens and hooked up with a woman while he wore a fireman's outfit. So
Who hasn't done that
but-
at least once?
But that has a similar. I mean, that's similar
Yeah.
because even in Jake the Snake's story, the piece of his story that we see in this, it's really just that his narcissism and
Yeah.
his total selfishness is what keeps him from his
And-
daughter.
yeah.
The substance abuse is just
Yeah, I mean they do it kind of more with
Distraction.
steroids in the wrestler than with anything else.
Right.
And also there's
but the
there's also, like, a
narcissism
little
is still
bit,
there in the
yeah,
wrestler.
there's also a little bit of like of mankind in there too, though, like taking the hard falls that nobody wants him to take.
Yeah.
yeah,
Stuff
and
that the-
yeah,
True.
there was like the wrestlers like an amalgamation of like
A
Jake
lot of these
Roberts,
dudes,
this wrestler
yeah.
named Jerry Lynn, who like looks like Randy the Ram, but like they're very dissimilar in
Yeah.
their personalities and trajectories, and like Hulk Hogan,
Yeah,
as well. So
the wrestler made me cry for 90 straight minutes. It's
Yeah.
Which
fucking
one?
brutal.
Yeah, it is.
All of them.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of like that last scene with Mankind and like paralleling that with like that last scene with Randy the Ram where everyone's like, what is it, the Ram Jam or whatever? Is that his move?
Ram Jam.
I think it was.
Is that what it,
Yeah.
yeah. And is it like Marissa Tomei's like looking down on him and like
It's so sad.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
at an
that-
actual wrestling event. Like it was actually at a Ring of Honor wrestling event.
Oh, really?
Which in Ring of Honor is a really big independent promotion, and Mickey Rourke actually trained to be a professional wrestler. And all the people that he wrestled in that movie were professional wrestlers. They weren't actors or anything like that. They were professional wrestlers. And then Mickey Rourke was actually thinking about wrestling in the WWF for a WrestleMania against Chris Jericho, the runner-up of one
Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, Dancing in the Stars. Yeah, and of VH1 Talking Head show fame.
Was he going to wrestle as Mickey Rourke? Or
He was
going to
wrestle as Mickey Rourke, not
Like
as.
I was hoping he was going to do his character from Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man. And Big John Stead was in that too, and he was a wrestler.
And Terry Funk, he was in Over the Top and Roadhouse. So there's
Terry Funk is a true Renaissance
We have not
man.
really talked about Terry Funk that much.
Oh yeah, yeah.
forever, forever.
Because we could talk about Terry Funk. All right, you talking about your music you don't like or you like or whatever. Let's give her a Terry Funk song.
Do we have to do that?
Oh, you'll love this.
Does every wrestler
Do you think
have a song?
Rapolgi is a good one? No, he recorded an album in Japan that was something else. It was in his will that this album would never be released in Texas, but now it showed up on the internet
Yeah,
so everyone can hear it.
This is Terry Funk with Roppongi.
Roppongi?
It's a district in Tokyo where the Gaijin go to hang out.
Oh my god. I hate this.
Wait.
Oh my god.
I wish audio could capture the horrified look that Monica Scott has at this
Oh
moment.
man, I needn't have been worried at the beginning of this episode that I wasn't prepared with music for Monica to hate.
I love this song. I love this song. I discovered this album, I think it was April 28th, 2012.
This is so
And it changed
hellish.
my life.
I forgot that there's so much professional wrestling music.
Oh yeah.
And this is
There's
from
so
Japan,
much.
too. Oh, here's
This
the
is so
chorus.
bad.
Here's the chorus.
in American cigarettes.
Oh my god.
Drinking hot sake, but I still can't forget all of
What?
the times that I should have said I love you.
Ew, it sounds like he's.
Was this a successful album?
love you.
Here's the sax.
You've been grooving to this too, Rivers.
Oh, you got me into this.
Oh yeah, you love this. I love this album.
How well did this album sell?
No, it was only in Japan. It was only in
so
Japan.
much.
He was a big star in Japan. That thing we keep doing, you see in the movie forever.
Yeah.
That was from his Japanese retirement. Wrestling's big in Japan, so there's a lot of wrestlers that are really big stars in Japan, and Terry Funk's one of them.
Yeah, similar to like how Arnold Schwarzenegger made commercials for like Japanese liquor, but they didn't air over here. Like he released this just for the Japanese market.
Terry Funk has retired.
You can see the writing on the
of times.
As many times as the Who.
Yeah, so Terry Funk's last
Abdul-Jabbar.
his last retirement, and I actually looked this up, was 2015.
Oh my God!
no.
Really?
That was the most recent
what the
time.
fuck? What's
And
happening
he's
with
like-
his knee
he's like
then?
70
Does he have a
now,
knee?
Right?
No, I don't. I think he's probably.
Texas tough.
Well, he walks like this now.
Yeah. Oh, this is great for a visual.
Oh gosh! Oh gosh!
Oh,
it's
no.
So sad.
He does
He's a bow-legged cowboy.
Yeah.
God, I wish we could have seen that on the radio pack because it was
Yeah,
beautiful.
well, he does walk like he's been on a horse for 8 days. Basically, that's
Yeah.
kind of how he walks.
He has hemorrhoids like it too, but really, who doesn't?
He kind of walks like Grandpa from Rugrats.
Can I say this? Have you all ever seen the movie Willy Wonka? Willy Wonka and his child. Doesn't a grandpa on Rugrats look exactly like the grandpa in Willy Wonka? The guy who was in Chico and the Man? Like they're identical except a hearing aid.
I'd buy that. I'd buy that hypothesis.
Sure. Yeah, Terry Funk had more retirement matches than fucking Kiss. Like
That's crazy. It's crazy. He's still alive.
yeah, he's still alive. Yeah,
And he's
Thankful for that every moment of every day. So appreciate Terry while we still have him.
yeah. But that part of the movie was just where he's trying to get his brother to come to the thing,
Oh,
Was that his brother?
or was his brother? Who was
No,
he?
He was
Okay.
the only other wrestler
all
in
right,
Armadillo.
all right.
Oh no, there used to be Armadillo used to be a wrestling center in Texas, so there
But
was a
then-
lot of wrestlers there.
But it wasn't that the thing that they said about that guy that he was like
Okay.
begging to come to the match and he made him the
this
referee.
is Dennis Stamp. Yeah,
Oh, it was
this is
Stamp. Okay, it
so
was his brother.
so his brother.
You're so
his
delighted to
brother.
bring him up.
This is like if you guys have not seen Beyond the Mat. This is the high point of the entirety of
Yeah.
this documentary. You will see people get concussions. You'll see all sorts of crazy stuff. You'll see a guy get basically tortured in front of his kids while they cry.
You'll see a guy
see-
brag about people he killed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You'll see a guy.
Let's get
Who
back
has
to that.
it?
though.
You'll see a guy throw up in a trash can as he's being coached by a billionaire. And
right,
all
sure,
of that
yes, that's
stuff
weird.
Does not pale in all that stuff pales in comparison to Dennis Stamp's workout routine.
Oh yes.
Dennis Stamp was a journeyman wrestler. Didn't get much of a name as being a big star. He's like a journeyman. And he does the greatest. He has to get in shape because he doesn't know when he's going to get booked.
And he hadn't in like a year or
He
something
hadn't
when he
been
was.
in a long time. I'm not booked, Terry. I'm not going to make it because I'm not booked.
Yeah.
I don't go to an event if I'm not booked. I
Yeah,
made that
that's
a
a
tradition.
wrestler's code. You don't go to an event. It's like the opposite of stand-up comedians.
I know,
Like
we go
stand-up
to
comedians
every show
where
we're
you
not
have
booked
to go
on.
to every show. With this, it's like a pride thing where it's like, if I'm not booked, I'm not going to show up, even if it's your retirement, Terry. But Dennis Stamp, who is a exterminator, how did you guys feel about his workout routine?
It seemed both dangerous and ineffective.
yeah, that's what it was.
Monica is.
It didn't seem. Yeah, it seemed like a mess.
Yeah. Well, because what Dennis Stamp does is he gets in his skimpiest of undies, his skimpiest of underoos.
I'd call them panties.
This is like a 57-year-old man that's an exterminator by trade. So just think of like
The sexiest exterminator there is, though, apparently.
yeah. So just think of your normal person that works at Orkin that's like in their 50s.
Okay, I'm picturing a specific person.
Exterminator.
So he's like wearing his skimpy skivvies, and he's nothing else, and he's jumping up and down on a trampoline and lifting like women's aerobic weights that weigh like 3 pounds, and he's hopping up and down and lifting them in like a military press. He's just like, I gotta stay in shape. This is my routine. It keeps me agile and coordinated.
It just
But
I
it
think
looks
I
like
have-
something that would be really fun for like a child.
I think I have the perfect comparison to explain what this guy's like. This guy is Dale Gribble with Bill Dauterive's body. If you ever watched King of the Hill,
Exactly right. Oh my God.
I think that pretty much sums up who he is.
Yeah.
But he's convinced that he's like ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, that's why I stay in like tip top shape.
And it's just like, do you?
Yeah.
But were they brothers? They were brothers?
No, they're not
No.
brothers. They grew up together.
They grew up together.
Okay.
That's
So
what it is.
the-
Yeah.
The Funk family is a wrestling family. So Terry Funk has a brother, Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah.
Because Dory Funk Sr. Yeah.
And he's his older brother.
I think that's what you might be thinking
Oh,
of.
okay.
If you remember when Terry Funk's coming out for his final match, like
Yeah.
final match in quotes, there's a guy in the Letterman's jacket that's next to him that
Yes.
looks like
Okay, yeah.
absolutely. That's his brother Dory Funk Jr. And he still wrestles to this day at age like 74.
Was this Terry's first retirement?
No, the part where he keeps going forever. That was his first retirement in 1983.
This wonderful album was actually made to capitalize on
the
that retirement.
retirement.
Yeah.
Good God, that album. So bad.
Like Terry Funk is insane. Like he's absolutely,
what-
but in like a great way. You know?
What about that guy whose character was New Jack and he said he murdered people?
Oh, yeah.
He might not have been kidding.
I mean, it didn't
next
seem
Denzel.
like he was kidding.
He's kind of not. Some of them are full of it, but that guy's kind of not kidding.
And then, like, the director made friends with him, and I was like, this is really blurring a line. You're, like, getting this guy auditions.
It's kind of like, I'd love to imagine it's just like New Jack being like, "Hey, aren't you the dude that wrote Boomerang?" Like, I love that movie. Get me in Hollywood.
It
Also,
was
New
weird.
Jack had like the weirdest interaction with that casting director.
Yeah, it
Like
was so uncomfortable.
Right, yeah.
When the casting director was like, well, the audition's over.
Yeah.
It's a no.
I don't
Yeah.
blame him though, because I'll be honest, I watched that whole movie, and this is pro wrestling, so you got people doing the craziest stuff and wearing the craziest and silliest shit. And I thought those two casting directors were the phoniest people in the movie.
Yeah, that's 100% true. They were just like, yeah, I think he could be a leading man. Well, maybe not a leading man, a character.
sexuality
He's-
out of a guy that stabs people with a fork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was he calling his murders? It was something
He
weird.
was a bounty hunter.
Justifiable
homicide.
Justifiable
Yeah,
homicide.
he's,
it was just
uh,
like, and then the director's like, I mean, I don't have any friends with justifiable homicides.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you excited? What is happening to you?
New Jackson's he's Denzel's friend. New Jack is legitimately insane. Like there was a story on the cover of Creative Loafing, which is like the LA Weekly of Atlanta, that chronicles New Jack and like how he was a bounty hunter and how he's killed people. Like my favorite New Jack thing.
Very cool.
He shows up from time to time on those Maury shows where they
Yeah.
scare the kids, and it's like, oh, you thought you were going to
He's
go
the
to
scared straight guy?
Oh yeah, you think you're going to go to boot camp? Guess what? It's even worse because you got New Jack shooting staples in his forehead.
Actually, I think you could find a career niche with Scared Straight.
Yeah, but New Jack is quite possibly the most insane wrestler ever because like there'll be things where like he'll legitimately try and kill people in the ring. Like there's one match that's
Oh my
like,
God.
insane where he wrestles this 68-year-old guy named Gypsy Joe.
Okay, that's offensive.
And Gypsy yeah, Gypsy Joe is he's tiny and he's old and he looks like he's wearing a women's one-piece bathing suit. And New Jack just proceeds to just beat this guy senseless because he offended him. Like he just starts hitting him with things, like anything he can find. Like there was another
Holy
match where
shit.
he like. There was like a scaffold match where it was like, it
Yeah.
was in kind of like, it wasn't an ECW, but it was in one of those ECW-like organizations where they just ratchet up the violence. He threw one guy accidentally had thrown New Jack off of something and like cracked his skull. So New Jack
What?
like threw the guy off of the scaffold and like tried to like kill him. And if you have
fuck.
like interviews with New Jack, it's like, yeah, I tried to kill Vic Grimes. Fuck him. You know?
You're just like, what?
He stabbed
No.
the guy with the fork in Boston on that ECW
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Remember Geary, who was on this show once?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was there for that. He was an audience. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
like this guy is legitimately like
Is he still
He's still alive.
Doing
He's still
it?
wrestling. He's still
Jesus.
partying down, and
Yeah, I was amazed. A lot of the hard hitters in this movie ain't dead.
That's terrifying.
Because Jake the Snake's still there.
Because watching
New
it,
Jack,
I
Terra
was
Funk.
like, "Oh, these guys are killing themselves."
Yeah.
This is because that was one of the bigger.
Dennis Stamp. He didn't fall off the trampoline. Those trampolines are dangerous.
He's still got those turquoise
Stampoline.
weights.
Yeah, I know. You can't get homeowners insurance if it's a trampoline in the backyard.
But it is interesting because it does feel like the takeaway is like, "Oh, this is you end your life by doing this." Like
Yeah,
they're killing
well,
themselves.
most of them-
some of them do.
I mean,
some
they're
of them
ruining
don't.
their bodies.
That's what I was gonna say. Most of them they're alive, but
Ruined.
The quality of life not so great.
Well, Foley got out of it early, though.
Well, he's still he's actually been doing.
He's still out there hurting himself.
Well, no.
He is again? I thought he said he couldn't wrestle
No,
no more.
what I was gonna say is like he has been. I think he must have gotten like a surgery or something, so he's better. But for a long time, he had like problems walking. Like he couldn't when he would go up on stage and stuff. He would have to have someone help him get.
Because it's fucking
like,
awful
up
what he was
onto-
doing to his
I
body.
know that.
Yeah.
I saw him once at a comic book show or something years ago. He was in good shape then, but that was a while back.
Pat and I saw him. We were standing out after open mic at Meltdown, and we're just like talking to Kyle Clark, and he goes, "Hey, you guys might want to turn around." And we both turn around, and
shit.
Foley's like coming in, and he's wearing the full like Cactus Jack, like the plaid shirt, the Cactus Jack shirt, the fucking sweatpants. Like he's wearing the full,
Yeah.
he's ready to.
wears. That's what he wore when I saw him. It was probably 10 years earlier.
Yeah, and he comes in, and he's huge.
Yeah, and he's just like, "What's up, boys?" How
Yeah,
you
he was
doing?"
like, "Hi guys," and just like he's like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" I'm like, "Oh shit!" And like it's like the NBA effect where you see a guy on
Yeah.
TV and you're like, "Oh, that dude's short," and then you see him in real life, you're like, "Holy fucking shit, that guy's a
Like,
monster."
yeah, that guy's
Same
he's-
with Foley because he's always next to like super tall guys, but
Yeah.
he's a
Right.
tall fucking
Foley's
dude.
like a little bit shorter than me. Like
tall is he?
He's like probably about a good 6'3", and
Okay.
he's like built like a fridge.
Yeah, he's huge, just like a massive man coming
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
But yeah, it like I'd never seen him. I'd seen him like
It's weird with wrestlers and heights because all their heights are kind of as made up as everything else.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some guys that they make look bigger on TV, but there's so many really big guys that there's a lot of guys like Scott Hall that are really huge, but they're
Yeah.
around so many big guys that you don't realize just how huge they are.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, Foley. I mean, that made my heart skip a beat. I was like, "Oh, there's Mick Foley." I was like, "Oh, I love
Yeah.
Mick Foley."
Just me and Rivers with the vapors standing there in that parking lot.
What was he doing?
He was Meltdown
The
Comics.
I wish.
Meltdown Comics, that store. There's the Meltdown Comics on Sunset Strip. They're running like 15 different businesses out of that one building, and one of them is an internet-based home shopping channel.
Oh, yeah.
And Foley was there they had a segment where they were selling wrestling toys, and Foley was there
Oh,
like
that's
talking.
cool.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
why he was there.
I feel like there's so much more to talk about, but should we come in for landing? Do you got more?
I wanted to talk about puke. That's because that is.
Oh yeah, because when I walked in the house, we started and we kept being like, we have to stop talking about
Because
this.
that is I'd say there's the trampoline guy, and then
He's got up here.
Yeah, there's the three stars of this movie are obviously Roland Alexander, Darren Drozdoff, and Dennis Stamp. They're the three.
Wait, who's
mega-
Roland? Which one is
The
Roland?
one that
the
looks
guy-
like Ron Jeremy.
Yeah,
Like,
Yep,
he looks
yep.
like he had his pizzeria shut down for health code violations.
Oh no!
That guy.
And then he opened a gym in its place.
yeah, and then also someone bit off his nose, and they had to fuse it back on. Also,
Was he a wrestler?
no,
Because he wasn't no famous wrestler. I
No,
had no
and
clue
also
who
the
guy
filmmaker
was.
called him a carny in the end, and I was like,
kind of
Okay.
was, yeah.
yeah, and then
That,
Yeah.
wrestling came out of the carnival.
that's true. Yeah, wrestling is from the carnival. That's
when they show,
where it came from.
I felt actually a lot of empathy for him when they show he takes those two guys to audition.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's standing backstage watching on the monitors. I empathize with that feeling of being like in a professional setting that he's sort of out of place in. He looks like a doofus. He wore sweatpants.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and he was just like. He's like looking around at all these producers and stuff who are kind of talking callously about those guys, and they're
Right,
like, "Oh, we're
right.
gonna steal that move" and stuff like that. And
I've
he's
never
just
seen
like,
that. I'm gonna steal that one.
I felt for him in that moment
Yeah.
and no other moment.
And he
that
looks
they
like
showed
he's
him.
looking like John Oates' haggard dad.
Because every other moment they show him, and he's essentially just swindling aspiring
Right.
guys.
Nobody goes out before you get payment. You gotta
Yeah,
pay me
he
first.
was definitely a
20%
dick
of their
about it.
contract.
Yeah.
He gets 20% of their
That's
earnings.
also a fucking crazy cut.
shit ton of
Yeah.
money.
You know, I think the thing is, if you don't know wrestling, you watch the movie different. Because I have a tendency to miss what's going on because I'm just trying. Oh, there's Jim Cornette. There's Jim Ross. I'm
yeah.
just trying to identify everybody that's in the background.
Yeah, there's that guy, and then
I got to go in blind so I could see all these
Yeah.
fun details.
right.
Like how tragic I found that man. What a fun detail.
That's why outside perspective is always good.
Darren
Darren
Drozdov.
Drozdov. Oh man.
Oh, he's only in the beginning and the end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. He comes in, and my favorite. I think it's
He's
my
the
favorite.
introduction to the business of this, though.
Yeah.
Right?
What
That's sort of
your
the,
guys' response to that? Because
I liked it. So for me, it was the introduction to like the business side of this. They explain who Vince McMahon is. They kind of explain what the company is, and then the first thing you see is this fucking weird meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Vince McMahon and
Well, I hear you have the ability to
and-
regurgitate.
Well, and
Yeah.
some like board of directors or something.
Those are his.
Oh, those were the guys that made the show. And
Well-
things
They're
like
like
in
this. Cornette was there, right?
So
And Ross?
it's Jim Ross, the talent.
he was the
relations.
talent guy.
There's Jim Cornette, who I think was vice of talent
Was he
relations.
booking that, or was he doing talent?
And then there's
was
his
a booker.
son, Shane McMahon, who's Vince's son, who has
Interesting.
just recently
Yeah.
come back into the company.
Jim Cornette hates this movie, by the way.
Yeah, Jim
Does he?
Cornette.
Yeah, the guy with the white, the guy that seemed
Why
like
does
the
he hate
nicest
it?
guy.
Yeah.
With the cream colored jacket, and
Yes,
the cream colored
yeah.
tie. He thought it exposed the business and made everybody look like fools.
He's from Kentucky, and he's got this real high pitched shit, and he's got a podcast, and they're exposing the goddamn business.
Well,
I really liked
Technically
that it
right,
exposed
though.
the business.
Yeah.
But I found it's like that. I mean, I guess at the time, I don't know what the world.
That's why he was pissed, because you can actually get his reaction on it because he's talking about it. And like we were saying earlier, there was a lot of documentaries that came out around this time
Yeah.
that kind of exposed the wrestling business.
Yeah.
But even though the internet was out then, at the time this was being made, like people for the most part didn't know this stuff, and
Right.
nobody had seen like the insider's view of what goes on.
And nobody, for the most part, like culturally, that wasn't popular
And-
to see the inside of a company.
Yeah.
Like people didn't understand how the entertainment business worked in general.
Wrestling in particular is a really, really secretive business.
Yeah.
It always had been.
It used to be like the mafia. Like you had to be let into it. You had to know somebody and kind of
Which
go
is
through
what makes the sweetness of all the relationships, though, because everybody, the camaraderie is so
Yeah.
powerful to
Oh,
watch,
yeah.
like especially to watch the wrestlers talk to each other.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say that the like producer in me was so into learning all the business stuff.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like,
Yeah.
this is really interesting.
And I mean, Jim
smart.
Cornette hates it because back when he started out, this was like in the 70s. Like he like mostly was in Tennessee and Mississippi and Louisiana and places like that. And all of those all those people down there
Yeah.
thought it was real, and he was a bad guy, and they would
He used
go
to hit
after
people
him
with a tennis racket.
a loaded tennis racket because people would go after him with
my God.
because people would go after him with like knives and
Oh,
people would bring guns
Yeah,
and
yeah.
threaten.
Tell him what Roddy Piper told you.
Yeah, I mean Roddy Piper. Like I talked to him one time, and he claimed that he'd been stabbed. Like, but that wasn't at wrestling events. Like there was one event where there was this tag team called the Fabulous Freebirds who were like
Okay.
absolute villains, and they were basically hated in Louisiana because they had quote unquote blinded this one wrestler, the Junkyard Dog, who was
Okay.
like the big hero there.
Yeah.
And at one match, they were exiting, and somebody had come out and was pulling out what looked like a gun and pulled it out and pointed it at them and shot Drano into the eyes of one of the guys
Yeah.
in the group. Like people would bring
What
knives
the
and
fuck?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
people
mean
thought
there's
the shit was real, man.
Well, that was extreme even for them, though, because Drano takes premeditation.
Right.
Yeah.
that's true.
You definitely had to. You knew you were
yeah,
putting
you would
Drano
have
in
to
a water
get like
gun.
police escorts to like, you know. So for Jim Cornette to be like, this exposes the business. I mean, for him to get into that business and there being so many clearances and it being like the mafia, like that's one of those things where I can understand why he feels very protected.
Piper told you his leather jacket was made out of Kevlar.
Made out of Kevlar.
In case he got stabbed.
Well, God bless that great man.
Yeah,
but you remember
yeah.
what we said about wrestlers like to stretch the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
But for Cornette, wouldn't this make it so that people would stab him less because they're like, oh, it's
That's
fake.
not the point.
It's fake. We won't shoot people with
Some
grain.
people,
No.
if you're going to be in the business and be successful, you got to believe it and you maintain that. And the days when people thought that stuff was real was when wrestling was wrestling. When you could go to an event with smoke and people with beer at their hands and throwing stuff. That was wrestling.
Oh man, that sounds so
Beat the
dangerous.
poop out of the fans. But I love the part with like draws where it's like Vince McMahon, like the gears spinning in his head.
Yeah.
He's just like, whoa.
And he's like a star maker.
Puke has a nice connotation.
Yeah, puke
is good. Puke is nice.
My favorite is
Which is like, no, it's not. What are you even talking
favorite-
about?
I like the part where he says, puke isn't necessarily bad. It could be puke.
Yeah.
Like, that's not better.
He goes, we've got...
Inflection changes the meaning here. Is this Chinese or something?
Hawk, we have animal.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Puke.
He goes, we have hawk, we have animal, puke.
As if that's
Those
a
have to do with each
sequence
other.
that everyone understands.
It's like,
Well, to be fair, they do both vomit.
I was going to say, I guess birds do feed their young like that, but...
And
other-
animals
Well, they'll vomit too.
exist.
Yeah.
You have an animal, and then
But then-
an animal
but then this-
could be a hawk, and then hawks masticate, and thus they puke.
But the scene is so strange when he's like,
Pulls out the trash can.
He's like, all right, I need you to do something for me, and pulls out the trash can, and then just starts screaming at him. It's so creepy.
To be fair, as insane as that was,
It was insane.
Yeah.
but the only way I could rationalize it is McMahon, as we said, was an announcer too.
Yeah.
So all I could see was him trying to envision the scenario because the announcer on TV makes a lot of the story.
Yeah,
and
which is
he's got a puke.
That's interesting because then that makes a good visionary CEO, I guess,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
if he was the announcer and that's like sort of his skill set is like seeing the path that this character could go down.
Weirdly enough, puke probably one of the more common less crazy things that was on wrestling on at that time.
Well, yeah.
on
Also,
World
but
Wrestling
this shit. But if
Federation.
this is your
The
introduction
characters.
into this, like. He was describing the things that would happen in the ring. He's like, and then you'd puke on this guy and that guy. And I was like, what? What is this?
And then you'd puke on the referee. And then you'd puke on your opponent. And then you'd get disqualified.
He
Because
pulls out a notepad. It's just a list of things he can puke on.
See, I was thinking Vince maybe just like walked by one of those Primal Rage video game cabinets at some point, and there was the gorilla that puked on people.
Well, he just had a list of things that he would puke on if he had that skill.
I'd puke on the person at the
Yeah,
DMV.
it's also like obvious. Like, of course, that wasn't successful. That is boring. Once he does it like twice, you're kind of like, okay,
All right, stop
And then,
destroying your
and then he turned the character kind of. He was still puke, and then he became the draws, and then became like a low-level drug dealer. That was like his character after that.
a road warrior at one point.
Yeah, that was he was
Weren't
going to
we
be
all?
Hawk, Animal, and Puke.
That was a tag team.
And then he started selling drugs on the sly to Hawk. So selling drugs to your tag
and
team
then
partner.
Hawk fell off the
And then Hawk jumped off of the 25.
That actually made me puke on cue when they did that.
Also, when he went in that conference room, he just like spit in the. He didn't puke, right?
Yeah.
He was like,
Yeah,
and then
and
just,
and then they
he
just
didn't
like
have-
move the camera away.
yeah,
Would you like some coffee?
yeah. What a weird offer.
Our coffee is pretty disgusting here. We're going to do
There's
a
like
big
a-
initial public offering, but we still use Folgers.
There's like a sad secretary that made the coffee. That's like, if Susan would just learn how to make it.
Probably Pat Patterson making a coffee.
Yeah.
Using
I would
that
like if they
Cafe
then just
Bustelo crap.
held on that secretary for
Yeah.
like 30 seconds. We're just kind of like, oh, I don't know. It's just an office job for me.
I don't give a shit about any of this.
The
I'm an artist.
documentary was made by the guy that made like The Nutty Professor and The Nutty Professor.
He made
2.
The Nutty Professor.
Oh, that's
like
what
the
Disney
writer.
was made
No,
this.
he was the writer of like all these like Eddie Murphy. Like he was a writer for SNL during like the 1980s.
Oh yeah, the director.
yeah.
I know it was also was produced by Brian Grazer and
Ron Howard.
yes.
Yeah. Imagine
Yeah.
Entertainment.
Yeah. That's good. I was worried it was produced by the WWF. We have a bad habit of actually accidentally watching propaganda.
We've so far done that with Katy Perry and Magic the Gathering.
And I hated it both times. Okay. Do we want to try to boil this down in 3 or less sentences?
Ooh, that's tough.
I could. Yeah.
I feel like I could do it.
Yeah. All
Go
right.
for it, hot shot.
First.
Okay. Beyond the Mat is a documentary about the business of pro wrestling and the tragic lives of the broken people that are the athletes in that
See,
world.
actually, that's the reason a lot of people in wrestling will complain about stuff like that, though, because it makes it look like everybody ends up that bad.
But
some people become exterminators, and that's a perfectly good job.
Or the biggest star in Hollywood.
Sure, yeah.
Governor of Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, that was fun. It was a
he was in
fun check-in with him.
With Jesse
I'm a
Ventura.
tender man.
I loved the very last thing.
I'm a big sweetheart.
The very last shot is he says all that shit and then just puts a huge cigar in his mouth. It's like, you don't have to do that in the interview.
Hell yeah. That was the governor of your home state, Luke. That's awesome.
That's so funny.
No, he's from North Dakota.
North Dakota.
Oh,
just
okay.
adjacent, though. Minnesota's right across the street from my
I
parents'
didn't know,
house.
based on the fact that your mom was in Purple Rain and you're a fan of the Teen Wolves, so.
Well, yeah. My
Who's
parents
your
are from
mom?
Minnesota. What?
Who was your mom in Purple Rain?
Oh, she was. I mean, she was cast as a dancer, but that scene got cut, so she was just like an extra in the concert.
in
at
the
the
first
end.
What?
stream.
I don't know this information.
We talked about this in Luke's in the Star Wars
I
episode.
was getting a weird deja vu all of a sudden.
Yeah. Look for that in Purple Rain.
Well, I went. Anyone else want to try?
Oh yeah.
3 or less sentences.
You got one, Luke?
It's a movie about the.
Cool.
That's
Great
it.
job,
That's my whole
Rivers.
thing. And I end it there, and I'm satisfied with it, and it's better than Monica's.
Fuck you.
Beyond the Mat is a documentary about the world of professional wrestling, about the characters involved and their pursuit or how their pursuit of their dreams affects everyone around them
That's good.
for ill or for otherwise. So,
That's good. That was good. I liked that.
Beyond the Mat is a documentary about the business of pro wrestling and the wrestlers that participate in it from the beginning of their careers to the ends of their careers, both in a positive and negative light. And it also tells you a story about how not to work out as a 57-year-old man.
That's a good one.
Beyond the Mat is an inside look at the world of pro wrestling. It came out in the mid-'90s when documentaries like this were making this sort of thing novel and people were learning about this. I prefer a different one, though. The one about Bret the Hitman Hart wrestling.
Okay.
I think that one's a better inside view of the wrestling business. But it doesn't have Terry Funk.
It is fun that when you would describe this documentary to someone, you'd say you
Describe-
prefer a different one.
I recommend it only for, if anything, for Dennis Stamp.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and Mr.
Tune into
Ass.
Stamp.
Also,
Yeah.
I mean, the best thing to recommend in this movie, there are 2 pretty high quality versions on YouTube. You can just
Yeah, it's super easy to watch.
real easy to watch. Yeah. So if you're interested,
Cool. Do you want to try again, or do you really?
I'm
give
satisfied.
Up? All right.
I'm legitimately satified with what I said.
I've never been satisfied with anything you've said.
I'm satisfied with your selection of Drowning Pool at the beginning of this episode.
Guys, thank you so much for talking to us about
Thank you
this
for
and doing this
having us.
wacky crossover
I apologize
episode.
for me talking a lot.
No, it's okay. It
I
was
apologize for knocking things over in the background.
that was good too. Where can people follow you guys if they want to?
So you can find I'm on Twitter at Rivers Langley, on Instagram at Rivers Langley. You can follow the show at The Goods Pod on Twitter, and we are facebook.com/The Goods Pod
Definitely subscribe to
on Facebook.
The Goods from the Woods.
I've got nothing to add about a social media presence. Just rate, review, and subscribe. Give 5 stars to this podcast, and give 5 stars to the Goods from the Woods. And
Hell yeah.
yeah, support us both because we're a nice little family here.
Yeah, we all
Sort of.
record in the same room.
And if there's any ladies listening and they want me to support a cowboy, look me up because you never know we're good at materialize next.
That is how he travels.
By
It's a
teleportation.
lot of time and a lot of energy.
Luke. Where can
just-
people find you on the internet?
Just never mind. On Twitter at Luke F. Jensen.
Oh, God. Rivers and Luke are conspiring against me. I'm Mighty Monica. It's Monica with a K. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Oh man, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. I had a really good time recording that episode with Monica and Luke. Be sure to check out What Did You Learn? It's on iTunes and SoundCloud every week. Be sure to listen to that program. It's a whole lot of fun. And hey, look at the calendar. It's first day of summer. Song of the week this week is from Conspiracy of Owls. They're a fantastic band out of Detroit, Michigan. And we're going to hear a track off of one of my favorite summer records of all time. It's their self-titled debut record from 2010. And this song is called Tower of Diamonds. And we'll see you next week. Goods from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at The Goods Pod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.